attempted coup is underway right now in Venezuela. Gunfire could be heard, reportedly an exchange between competing military groups. It happened at a rally led by opposition leader Juan Guaido and a recently freed activist, Leopoldo Lopez. Guaido has been outside a Caracas airbase. He is urging Venezuelans to support him. He says troops are now backing him in what he describes as the final phase of a plan to oust President Nicolas Maduro. So here's a live shot from outside that airbase near Caracas that I was mentioning. As I said, reports of gunshots, protesters there filling the streets. They are throwing things in some cases, damaging some of the infrastructure. On that wider shot, there is some smoke that can be seen. Here's what we're doing, monitoring the situation, keeping an eye on this live shot. And there you can see some of the protesters throwing things right now in the middle of your screen, and the smoke certainly down the pipe there. We do have freelance journalist John Otis on the ground nearby watching this story. He joins me via Skype. Now, he's in Bogota, which is in neighboring Colombia. So glad that you're safe, John. What's the latest from the ground?
Well, Suhana, opposition leader Juan Guaido recently spoke to a big crowd of supporters. He was speaking through a bullhorn on the back of a flatbed truck near the La Carlota military base that is the ground zero for this uprising. And he said, you know, for many years we've been pushing the armed forces to come over to our side, and it's very clear that they are now with us and not with the dictator. And as you mentioned, Guaido was also appearing with the former political prisoner, Leopoldo Lopez. He was freed from house arrest this morning by his guards and the secret police. So that does indicate that there have been some fractures within Venezuela's armed forces. However, it's really unclear how deep these fractures are and how much support within the military that Guaido really has at this point. In his appearances, he's been surrounded by National Guard, members of the National Guard, lower-ranking members, lieutenants and on downwards. But there have been no, big-name, high-ranking military officials coming out on his side thus far. Guaido is calling on people to take to the streets. He says, we really need you to get out here and support this movement. He's basically saying it's now or never. He's calling this Operation Liberty or Operation Freedom. And his other message was that he's telling people to spread the word the best they can about this uprising, because there's an internet blackout in Venezuela right now. Twitter, YouTube, and other services have gone down. Also, the government controls the airways in Venezuela. So, it's quite plausible that Canadians may have a better grasp of the situation than Venezuelans in Venezuela right now due to these information blackouts.
And how is the government of President Nicolas Maduro reacting to today's events, John?
Well, pro-Maduro officials have acknowledged that this is indeed a coup that's in progress, and probably the biggest challenge that they have faced from Guaido and his forces since Guaido declared himself a competing president back in January. Many of the military's rank and file are suffering from food shortages and hyperinflation and all the economic problems that average Venezuelans are suffering. And many of the rank and file do support Guaido. However, the military's top brass is well paid. They have a lot of power and influence within the government, and so far they are sticking by Maduro's side. Government supporters are calling on people who support President Maduro to surround the Miraflores presidential palace in downtown Caracas. So far, there hasn't been much of a turnout, but that could change as events occur throughout the day. Maduro has thus far remained out of sight. However, he did send out a message on Twitter calling on his followers to maintain nerves of steel. And Nicolas Maduro is saying that we will win, we will overcome, and we will put down this coup.
Thanks for that, John. You stay informed, and we'll touch base again. That's freelance journalist John Otis. He is in Bogota. Now, Canadian officials are keeping an eye on things. Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland tweeted this: watching events today in Venezuela very closely. The safety and security of Juan Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez must be guaranteed. Venezuelans who peacefully support interim President Guaido must do so without fear of intimidation or violence.